Welcome to the Oakley Podcast, Trucking Business Family. I'm Jeremy Kellett, Director of Recruiting here at Oakley Trucking, and I'm your host for this podcast. This is episode 66. So on this episode, got a great guest joining us today in the Oakley Podcast room. Is Shannon Newton. She is the president of the Arkansas Trucking Association, and she's going to join me for the next 30, 40 minutes, and we're going to visit on some different topics. You know, maybe driver shortage, maybe I-40 bridge closure. We may talk a little bit about everything here. You never know. So she's got some good up-to-date information for us, got some good news for us, and we're going to visit with her in just a minute. But first, I want to give all our owner-operators and all our listeners a little Oakley update, what's going on. And this Oakley update is sponsored by Arrow Truck Sales. So first things first, of course, everybody knows we need some owner-operators. And to tell you what's going on, we've got some dedicated lanes available right now, especially Little Rock, Arkansas to Daingerfield, Texas, Little Rock, Arkansas to Oklahoma City. If you're interested in any of those, whether you're working for us or not now, or you're a recruit listening and you're interested in those lanes, give me a call. We also got, most of you guys know, we've got a run down in Baton Rouge, Louisiana, that we need some owner-operators there. That's actually in Baton Rouge, so if you live in or around that area, you can be home every night for that one, so give us a call on that. The word from dispatch is, I was talking to them, and it's I know it's kind of the same old stuff you guys have heard me say before, but it's clean the trailer. Make sure your trailer is clean. That is goes without saying. We had another episode this past weekend, didn't have a good clean trailer, going to a customer, showed up with a dirty trailer, had to go get it washed out, go back and get another one, whichever the case was. But make sure your trailer's clean, and also wash the outside of it. Wash your truck. We love having clean equipment. That's what we do at Oakley Trucking. Got a reputation to keep up, and that's with clean equipment. Also, from Miss Wendy Truck Trades, we need to make sure you're communicating with Miss Wendy on Truck Trades. If you're looking for a truck and you want to know what to do in the process, give Miss Wendy a call up here at the office, and we'll get you lined out on what to do next. Also, one little profile I wanted to make knowledge of this week was Carlos Hernandez. He's an owner-operator with Oakley Trucking, and he's been with us 16 years. A lot of y'all may know Carlos. His truck number is 4694. That'll tell you something right there. He's been here a long time because he still has that 06 red W900 Kenworth that he is the one he started with. So he's keeping it up. But he's done end dumps. He's done frac sand. He's running over-the-road pneumatic now. But I just wanted to let Carlos Hernandez know he's a great asset to Oakley Trucking. We appreciate you, man. We appreciate you getting you 16 years in this month. So that's your Oakley update, sponsored by Arrow Truck Sales. Let's take a quick break and talk about Arrow Truck Sales. Keith Wilson and Trey down in Springfield, Missouri, those guys do a fantastic job on selling trucks to owner-operators that are looking to come on to Oakley Trucking, and just want to make sure you guys know about them. We've dealt with them a long time. They are no leases, straight financing, specialize in first-time truck buyers, 5-year or newer tractors, all makes and models, less than 400,000 miles. They run a great program there. The best thing I like about them is service after the sale. Be sure and tell them you heard all this on the Oakley Podcast, and they'll also give you a choice of $600 worth of fuel or $600 truck accessories, or they'll pay half your first month payment if you finance with transport funding. Check them out. Call Keith Wilson at Arrow Truck Sales, 573-216-6047. Give them a call and let them know you heard it on the Oakley Podcast. Okay, let's get started with this episode of the Oakley Podcast. We are joined by Miss Shannon Newton, president of the Arkansas Trucking Association. How are you today, Miss Shannon?
I'm doing fine. Thanks for having me, Jeremy.
I appreciate you coming. How you like the Oakley Podcast studio? It's fancy?
It is fancy. It exceeds my expectations for sure.
You remember the old office. It probably had those things in mind of what was happening over in the old office, thinking, how's he going to do a podcast over here?
I figured you had built a nice little fort in the corner somewhere. We were going to...
Yeah. We've done good. Like I normally start out all our before we get into some of this business stuff, I always like for our listeners to know who they're talking to and understand who they're talking to. And I think you do a better job introducing yourself than me, maybe where you're from, where you live, family, hobbies, that thing, if you don't care.
Sure. So as you mentioned, I'm Shannon Newton. I'm the president of the Arkansas Trucking Association. Actually, just last week, I celebrated my 18-year anniversary with the Trucking Association. So I pretty much grew up there. It is pretty much the extent of my professional career. But for those of you in trucking who are listening will appreciate it. I did actually work at Maverick Transportation for a year right out of college. I actually did new hire driver orientation to the payroll process.
Man.
As like a 23-year-old fresh out of college. And so it was very much just kind of being thrown into the trucking industry without any sort of preconceived notion or exposure.
Where'd you go to college at?
I went to UCA in Conway. I grew up in Saline County. I graduated from Benton High School. Both my parents and grandparents are all graduates of Benton High School, and I live in Bryant now, which if you're from that area, you know that's kind of a big rivalry is the Benton-Bryant, the Salt Bowl. So sacrilegious. I live in Bryant. My kids go to Bryant now. I have two middle schoolers, a boy and a girl. And so we live there in Bryant, and I like to exercise.
Good.
And my kids keep me pretty busy with any other extracurricular activities. My son plays basketball on the Bryant junior high team, and my daughter is a competitive dancer. And so I do have a dance mom badge that I have to pull out from time to time.
That can be time consuming, isn't it? Yeah.
It is. Those of you who have children, you know, when your kids are passionate about something, you kind of adopt it and go along to get along. And so I enjoy it because she enjoys it.
Well, that's something. If they enjoy it, you got to, Mom. You got to do it. Well, that's good stuff. I didn't know you was a Bryant resident over there. That's good. So I like that part of the country. That's good. I live in Valonia, so it's up by Conway.
Opposite direction.
Yeah, which I went to UCA too. So
okay.
I like the UCA Bears. So what's it like being president of Arkansas Trucking Association? I mean, are you loving it? You've been doing it. Now you've been there 18 years, but you've been president for how long?
For 7.
7 years.
Yes. I mean, I will say that it is certainly not something that I envisioned or aspired to as a young girl growing up. My degree is actually in accounting. And so if you can think of an extremely right-brained, structured, wins and losses, tick marks, that is the way that my brain works. And trying to transition that into a role that has a lot of public relations and governmental affairs responsibilities, there's a little bit of a challenge and a learning curve there. I like to tell people that I apply what makes me tick to those types of areas. So for me, it's about winning and losing. It's about, winning, whether it be a policy argument or a persuasive opinion. That is the way that I kind of challenge myself to be successful.
You're the checklist person, aren't you?
I do. I have a lot of lists.
A lot of checklists, and you can't wait to check one off.
I love to get the Sharpie out and mark the next thing off the list.
And people don't cooperate a lot of times to get it checked off. I can see your frustration, Shannon.
Yeah. I operate with really high expectations of myself, and so I attribute that to, my success and being able to, just continue to find ways to be successful or to find that drive. A lot of people might think you work somewhere for 18 years and show up there each day, but I still have a lot of fire about doing it the right way. And some of the things you mentioned about, like, keeping your truck clean, like for me, changing and positively impacting the way that people perceive the trucking industry. We have a lot of opportunity.
Yes.
A lot of opportunity there. So I continue to strive to show up for work and do that each day.
Well, the trucking world is, is passionate, I can tell, to you, but it is to me too, because a lot of the public does not understand trucking like we live it every day, but a lot of the public doesn't understand the way trucking is and how heavy these things are, and all the stuff, the regulations that they have to follow and go by, and the companies have to follow, and it can be a little frustrating, to a company and the public not understanding what's going on with it. So I know it's a challenge dealing with that, but we're in that trucking world every day. We live it, and we think everybody else should know it, but
right.
They don't.
And that's one of the key components of the association's mission is to promote the trucking industry and to help people realize the connection between the standard of living that they enjoy. You know, we all like to go to the grocery store. We all like to have our packages delivered the next day. But we often take for granted everything that goes into place in order to make that happen. And so that's certainly something that we try to do, is to help more people understand the role that trucking plays in that.
I mean, not to put you on the spot, but how do you do that? I've wondered, how do we do that? How do we get people to understand the trucking industry?
Right. So from the association's perspective, we do a lot of, like I told you, I do a lot of news interviews, public relations appearances. We, regularly advertise in all sorts of trade publications and even in commercials on, public access television. We do some campaigns around holidays to promote the trucking industry.
Do we do anything with schools?
We do.
Like truck drivers going to schools and stuff?
We do. We have an Arkansas road team. That's kind of a whole, road that we could go down. But from the association's perspective, we actually have, so we passed legislation to create a commercial truck safety program grant, and then we turned around and applied for funds from that grant to create the Arkansas road team. And so we have a team of about 12 captains that are all employed as professional drivers within the industry in Arkansas. And then we also have a mobile classroom, and it is a trailer decked out with 2 full-blown simulators in the trailer.
Nice. And
we take the kids through the program. We talk about sharing the road safely with big trucks. And then we also try to weave in the workforce element of what these drivers do each day, and what the opportunities are within the industry for those young people.
That's
to go
good
to
to know that's happening, because more of that needs to happen.
Yeah, it's certainly been negatively impacted over the last 15 months or so, with just the access to people and schools and everything that's been brought on by.
I can remember when my son was, I believe he was in the 6th grade. Now he's 23 now, my oldest one. He was in the 6th grade, and I took one of our owner-operators, David Crothers. He volunteered to take his truck up there to Bologna grade school, and we took it up there one day, and I'm telling you, you wouldn't believe the blast that those kids had. And we did a little in-class presentation, answered questions, that kind of deal, and they all got to come out and climb through the truck. It was just fascinating, and it just makes you go, golly, then more of this needs to happen.
Right.
So.
That's very similar to the program that we put together now. We have about a 20-minute video just on, safely operating, because our target audience is like 8th, 9th, 10th graders. That's what we try to strive for with the program. So teaching them how to be, that's the commercial truck safety element of the program is, hey, you're about to, have the keys to the vehicle, blind spots, stopping distance, distracted driving, things of that nature that are really important. Yeah. But then we do let them get up in the truck and see, can you see there's a parked car here? Can you see it? And of course, honk the horn and all the things the cliche things. But it is endearing to the trucking industry to allow those kids that opportunity, for sure.
Well, that's good. I'm sorry I went down the path there, but that's the way it works here on this podcast.
That's totally fine.
What about, I really want to talk about, I know, and I'm sure our owner-operators probably get tired of me telling them, we need help recruiting guys because it's a constant battle with us trying to find good people, because we got some high standards here, Shannon, where it's got to be top-notch guy before we'll put them to work here as an independent contractor. But, it's all over. The driver shortage has been for years, but I think it's more emphasized right now. To me, in my 26-year career, this year is harder than any of them. And you've probably had other people at trucking companies tell you that, but it's harder than ever right now. And just trying to get in front of the guy, and get a phone call, get a lead, get something going with somebody, because I got all kinds of speculation of why, but the fact is we still don't have enough. And there's going to have to be more get into the trucking industry, but also we got to figure out how to take care of the ones that we've got and keep them from going out. What's your perspective on the driver shortage?
Yeah, so I think reemphasize and certainly acclaim everything that you said to be true across the board from the other member carriers of the organization that I've spoken with. The truck driver shortage, it was the number one issue in 2020, 2019, 2018, 2017. And you say, oh, it feels worse now. How is that possible? Or why is that, where's that coming from? And I will use this illustration. Yesterday, after church, my family and I tried to go to dinner at a major chain restaurant in West Little Rock, which you would think would be open all day, every day on Father's Day, Sunday for lunch. And we park our car in a major chain restaurant and walk up to the door, and the door is locked because they don't have enough staff to open the dining room for Sunday lunch. So I would say to you, you would never guess that is an option. Never in your wildest dreams did you think that the service industry, the restaurant industry would be in a situation where they can't find enough people to open the dining room on Sunday lunch. And if you take that example and apply it to the trucking industry, we are in a situation in which we've never been in. It is that bad. And it's not just us. It is across the labor market, whether you're talking about construction, manufacturing, retail, service. All of those industries are struggling to attract people to show up for work regularly. But it's just we've always been here.
I guess, but a year and a half ago, we're sitting here at Oakley, we had a waiting list. We could not get everybody in. I mean, we had a waiting list for months, for people, scheduled orientation coming in, and then all of a sudden, bam, it's gone, and it's back to trying to find somebody for next week, for the next week, for the next week. And
I think you have, obviously demand is greater now than it was a year and a half ago. Just the economy, the economic demand for number of shipments is up now as opposed to that time frame. And I think it's undeniable that you had people exit the industry as a result of everything that was the pandemic. Whether it be, there was a time during the pandemic where there weren't a lot of loads. There were industries
Correct.
that were significantly impacted negatively, predominantly in manufacturing, that did not have the loads to carry, or the restrictions that were put on drivers, or the way that they were made to feel isolated or not have access to, things while on the road. And so if you were within 18 months of retirement at any point, since March of 2019, it's highly likely that more of those people threw the towel in and exited early. And so you have that, and overlaid with there were no CDL schools open. There was a lot of states stopped issuing. They closed their revenue departments. It was difficult to do any sort of hazmat test. All of the pipeline.
So it stopped. It's
Correct.
Been broken, and we haven't got the pipeline.
Correct. So you had
together.
a number of people leave the industry. A reduction in just the pipeline of access for those to join the industry, and then you have this massive economic rebound, which is actually more reliant on logistics than it was before. It takes more trucks to deliver small packages to houses than it does to the retail store, which has significantly been impacted by just shifts in consumer behavior. And so we need more trucks, and we don't have the volume of drivers in order to meet that demand.
Yeah, it's I think a big part of it is because my wife keeps ordering stuff on Amazon or wherever, and I mean somebody showing up every UPS or somebody every
My
day.
husband's wife has that same problem.
But it's hard to understand because you go from a waiting list to having people coming, and you haven't changed anything. Sometimes you made things even better, but now it's harder to get guys. And I guess the demand is there for a lot of high dollar freight, a lot of people. Do you think there's more trucking companies now than there was 2 years ago, or is there a lot less? Do you know?
I would say less. I don't know if I would say a lot less. I think you had certainly some negative impacts of the pandemic, and then I think just over the last 18 months, and then even prior to that, the trend of consolidation has resulted in a fewer number of overall carriers. You have more trucks consolidated under fewer entities. I don't know that necessarily means less drivers or less power units, but the number of companies and the impact of consolidation is certainly.
I also read an article where I think that Drug and Alcohol Clearinghouse had a big impact. I can't remember, but it was thousands that were
I actually
in
do
that.
have that number. I think it's 42,000. Yeah, 42,000 drivers are listed in the new Drug and Alcohol Clearinghouse as being disqualified from driving because of abuse issues.
Well, that's a shocker in two ways. one, I can't believe there was that many drivers out there that, they evidently they registered or failed a drug test or alcohol test, so now they're put in the clearinghouse. So that's amazing. That's a
It
shocker.
is, but those are not the drivers that we want back.
Right.
Yeah.
And I don't know. It's I know that's had a big impact, but we see our guys are 55, 45, 55, 60, 70 years old out here. We're seeing a lot of older guys drive into their 70s, and I don't know whether they have to or not, but that you're just seeing a lot more of them do it. And I think that's just that generation just getting older.
Yeah,
and
I think
drive.
you do see that in all elements of the workforce, people working longer or working at higher ages than maybe the generation before them. I think the trucking industry is, again, another somewhat of a disadvantage in the pipeline process. The inability to attract young people to the industry, and part of that's our own fault in not accurately communicating, the opportunities that are available in the industry and the transition that's happening. I'm sure your drivers have all sorts of technology in the truck, and we haven't done a good job of portraying that to young people, that it's not your grandpa's farm truck, that's not the career opportunity that we're really promoting.
They do have automatics now.
Correct. But that chain, if you talked about going into high school, yes, it's great to go into high school, and yes, it's great for people to understand, what it's like to be in a truck and to have some sort of positive experience in that way. But if, as an industry, if we're successful in changing the hearts and minds of young people, in educating the counselors and the parents about the opportunities, and at 18 they say yes, we don't have anywhere to put them.
Right. You got that gap there from
Correct.
18 to 21.
The gap from 18 to 21 where they can't touch interstate commerce, we will until that is resolved, we will always be recruiting young people away from some other opportunity. They have chosen something else as an 18 to 23-year-old, and we are trying to lure them away to trucking.
Yeah, and that they've been talking about changing that forever, though.
Yes, they have. I will say that the federal piece of legislation is called the Drive Safe Act, and it is currently being negotiated as part of an infrastructure deal in the event that an infrastructure deal would be able to be passed in D.C. in the near future. We do have bipartisan support. The number of people who realize that it is irrational to say that a young person can safely drive from Texarkana, Texas to El Paso, Texas, but not from Texarkana, Texas to Little Rock, Arkansas, is illogical and doesn't make any. That's not a safety-based regulation. And so I just think that eventually, I do believe that will happen, and I do think that there will be positive impacts on the workforce and on our pipeline of drivers.
But the 18-year-old coming out of high school now, he can do intrastate, right? He can go get his CDL and do intrastate.
He can, but he can only touch freight that is designated as intrastate freight.
Ah, okay.
Yeah.
Which limits
Correct.
a lot of stuff there. Probably not a lot of tractor-trailer.
Not a lot of tractor-trailer stuff. There's the industries which are a little bit out of our bailiwick, like the construction industry, or true like farm-to-market ag trucking. Those types of jobs are available, or they can haul. They can legally haul that type of freight, but those are not necessarily annual jobs.
Well, and the sad thing is they're missing out on a great life, on a
Correct.
great career.
Correct. Instead of learning the way that you would in any other trade, instead of being introduced to the industry and having a mentor and learning, having that opportunity to learn as a young person what the career offers, they are instead employed either in some other industry or underemployed in a place where we'll have to go look for them later.
Yeah, and it's sad to say that or think about that, but I can remember, growing up, it seems like somebody would tell me, hey, go get your CDL. You always got something to fall back on. Well, I'm like, now that I've been in the trucking industry for so long, I'm like, go get your CDL because that is where you want to be.
Right.
That's a great career. It's a great job. You can make a great living. We have umpteen examples about that here at Oakley Trucking on, how good it can be to you.
Right. And I know your drivers probably, you talked about the longevity and the owner-operator model and the ability that they have to, high earning capacity of those individuals. But the average truck driver in Arkansas, so that's when you lump in, all the young drivers who are hauling, irregular truckload routes, all the way up to the average truck driver in Arkansas is making almost $45,000 a year, which is substantially more than the average Arkansan and the average opportunities that are available.
Yeah. But now it seems like we're fighting, not only that, but you're fighting just getting people to work a lot of times these days. So
yeah, I don't think we have not been helped by the extended unemployment benefits, and that's that's not just us. That's everywhere.
Mm-hmm. That's why you couldn't get lunch yesterday.
That's correct.
Which disappointed you, I can tell. What about I-40 bridge? All right, I went to Oxford, Mississippi this last weekend, and I went West Helena because I got the old iDrive, and I always check and see if anything's locked up there. And of course, it's always locked up. Anytime you pull up iDrive, it's locked up on the bridge. But so I took West Helena, which was surprisingly not much traffic, over there at all. I thought it'd be packed because people going that way, but it wasn't. It was nice, other than the rough roads in Mississippi. Arkansas is pretty nice, but the rough roads in Mississippi are something to be desired. But Corey was showing me this morning before you got here, he was showing me this big steel plate that has been put on the bridge over there in Memphis to repair it. Mm-hmm. So I'm hoping that's going to open up pretty soon, or we about done with this? I mean, we got to get some trucks across this bridge, Shannon.
I am for getting trucks across the bridge as quickly as we can feel safe doing so. Certainly the I-40 bridge closure has been the biggest media event since I've been in this role. I mean, the amount of attention that this has garnered nationally has been astonishing. I was actually in the Wall Street Journal last week, which is pretty crazy. Just from an industry perspective, right. the amount of attention and to our credit, I think we've kind of squealed loud that, hey, this is significant. This is significant to the trucking industry. It's not just a bridge that's connecting West Memphis to Memphis. This has regional economic impact, if not national economic impact. That we rely on this bridge in order to move freight in this part of the country. And so I will say, I do want to give credit to RDOT and TDOT. Of course, neither one of them caused the steel to break, and they have, done everything within their power to make this process as painless as possible. I mean, we have not made a request that they have not honored with regard to truck parking or traffic flow or information and communication. They have been good partners and are trying to get it fixed and make this as like I said, the least pain possible. Yeah. They have been very hesitant to offer a timeline, and I'll just, I understand why, because as soon as you establish a timeline, everything else goes out the window, and it's just, are you meeting or exceeding or, trailing your timeline? I do think that barring some additional news about, more fractures or additional issues with the bridge, I still think I've told people mid-August. I still think late summer is reasonable. These doomsday stories of it being, a year and a half. Like I have not heard anything that gives any credence to those scary rumors. But it's certainly an issue. It's very painful. I do have some statistics on the number of trucks that are avoiding the area altogether.
Oh, really?
Which I think is interesting. We were able to pull some. The American Transportation Research Institute has a tracking system in which they have carriers, thousands and thousands of trucks who elect to participate in their GPS modeling data, and as much as 46% of the commercial traffic that would have normally crossed over I-40 is going somewhere else other than I-55. So to your point about the West Helena Bridge, and then the north version is I-155 up in Missouri.
Crothersville.
Yeah. Both of those bridges are increased. They have significant increases, but they were so below capacity I think the bridge you mentioned, I think they're at 300% of what they were pre. But pre-bridge, they were, they had 80 trucks a day. So, 300% of that is nothing. That bridge can obviously still carry that amount of traffic without
everybody
any sort of congestion.
be aware of the pothole as soon as you get across the bridge in Mississippi. I'm just telling you,
at least it's in Mississippi.
It's in Mississippi. It's a good one. I know, the bridge is frustrating. Hey, thank goodness we got the old bridge.
That's right.
Because when I used to go to Memphis as a kid, we go on the old bridge or new bridge. Hey, let's go on the new bridge. It was a deal. Thank goodness we got the old bridge, and hope not everything's good with it. To be in the old bridge.
It has been inspected and re-inspected and then re-inspected again to ensure that it can handle the traffic.
Are they doing that all over the state now? I mean, bridges are a focus.
Yeah, of course, the I-55 bridge was priority because of the diversion that's being, pushed there right now. But yes, I think just what's unfortunate about that is no one now wants to be the guy that missed the crack,
right.
And so you're going to see a lot of bridge inspectors raise their hand and say we need to look at this again. And we've already seen that in some rural parts of Northeast Arkansas where some bridges as part of this reinspection have been, needed some maintenance in order to, and they were temporary shutdowns, like overnight, very minor things. But I do think you will see, as a reaction to this, particular scenario, no bridge inspector wants to be that guy again.
Right.
And so you're definitely going to have a higher threshold for which they alert for maintenance and repairs.
Well, sure. They're worried about their job.
Yeah,
they're checking
absolutely.
things out, making sure that in their area, however that works,
Right.
that their bridge is good to cross. I have heard some in the news that they've, shut a couple down or something,
Right.
diverted traffic or something like that. So, well, all good stuff. The bridge closure, the driver shortage. What about some good news, Shannon? We got good news. You get to hear good news all the time, I'm sure.
Well, you stole my thunder with the good news on the road team deal about.
Oh, did I? I'm sorry.
No, that's all right. I will say, a segue pretty conveniently. In Arkansas, we do have a lot of weight-restricted bridges, and that does impacts your drivers and a lot of our agriculture communities that are relying on those secondary roads to deliver freight or to get freight from its origination onto the major networks to be delivered. Back in November of 2020, I hope most of your listeners, or at least those in Arkansas, will remember there was an issue on the ballot in November. We referred to it as Issue 1. But it was a road funding campaign in which our association was largely involved in the lobbying for that to be referred, and then again as part of the campaign with the governor. And I can say we were successful. 73 out of 75 counties in Arkansas all voted in favor of extending that half-cent sales tax specifically dedicated to roads. But from that, we will be able to address all of the weight-restricted bridges in Arkansas over the next 10 years.
Awesome.
And so we are looking at, some major upgrades for our secondary roads. Cities and counties also receive a portion of that funding, as well as some addition in capacity between Little Rock and West Memphis on I-40, which I know as everyone in this area always, throws their hand on their head and says, oh, gosh, please don't send me to Memphis. The number of the truck traffic there. And so there's certainly the need for additional capacity between Little Rock and West Memphis. And through the funds that were approved through Issue 1, we do now have, the adequate funds in order to make some meaningful impact at a lot of places with regard to infrastructure in Arkansas. That will come with orange barrels.
Right, right.
And I know that's a little bit of kind of the pain in the process, but that does mean that we are prioritizing. We always say that's where we send our people to work. If you any other business, you've invested in this nice building here so that your employees, can show up to work at a place that they're comfortable and safe. And for our drivers, the roads, highways of Arkansas is their workplace. And so it's important to us that we spend the necessary resources in order to make them comfortable and safe for the drivers while they're out there.
Yeah, and that's good. And I used to years ago would hear our drivers complain about the Arkansas roads. I don't hear that anymore. I hadn't heard that in a long time, actually. So that's good news that we're. Yeah,
the 2020 campaign was an extension of a previously. We passed it initially, I think, in 2013. So since that time, there has been this half cent dedicated to infrastructure in Arkansas. it was set to expire, and so this vote was to continue it on so that funding wouldn't go away. So hopefully that will prevent your drivers from reverting back to a time whenever they complained about the roads in Arkansas.
Yeah, but it does. They're all glad now. They're all glad of the roads. I guess I just sat here listening to you talk about some of these things that you're getting done and going through. It's got to be frustrating dealing with politics, isn't it? It's just got to be frustrating as a person that really don't know anything about it. But it's just the guy driving the truck down the road, their wife at home. You're thinking, come on now, y'all. People got to have common sense. Let's get this done. But that's not the way it is it?
It can be frustrating, and I will say, like you and I, in our natural setting, we operate in a business environment in which you make a decision, you execute a plan, and things happen, and government is not like that, and there are good things and bad things about that. You wouldn't want, if you thought about in a company environment, you wouldn't want a different executive in charge every 4 years, because you could change the ship and change the course so quickly that things would never be able to be established and run their course. And so that's the perhaps the good thing about it is that you can't do things quickly, but that's also the bad thing is that it's very difficult to do things quickly. And so, like I alluded to in the beginning, for me, I certainly didn't grow up aspiring to be involved in politics. It's interesting to me. I like the wins and the losses and the winning people to our cause or winning people to our perspective. And so that's how I choose to look at it. But when if you talk about specific issues like the Drive Safe Act, or there are a lot of things that you and I could sit down with the majority of the people that have the responsibility for making this decision and convince them that our position is logical and correct. But it's very difficult for that to translate into action on the floor that actually comes back to your drivers and their wives and their families and things of that nature.
Takes time, I guess. But, hey, we got to have people like you
I'm going to keep trying.
Keep going, keep getting it done. What about the Arkansas Truck Driving Championship? Did we even do that this year?
We didn't. So it was one of those, the thing that we're not talking about, the impacts of all the bad things that happened in 2019.
Oh, yeah.
So in 2019, we canceled the Truck Driving Championship for reasons associated with the pandemic. And then the Nationals was actually canceled last year, and so we followed suit. And then we had our fingers crossed in hopes that 2020 would be different. But due to the nature of like the number of volunteers and the number of equipment that's donated, and you had a lot of people, that is a huge undertaking. If you've never been to it,
I've been there.
I was going to say we seat 800 people for the awards banquet on Saturday night. So if you think about that many people being in one place, the number of volunteers, the equipment, all of those, the station, pulling all those pieces together and having that significant amount of corporate buy-in to agree to do that, back in March. It was just a feat that we weren't able to pull off for 2020, but it is certainly something. In fact, last year was the first year that it hadn't been done since like World War II.
Oh, really?
So it's certainly a very high priority for us. It's actually my favorite event that we do in a calendar year, and really the only opportunity that we have to directly interface with the drivers and their families. I cry every time.
It's a good program.
Yeah,
it's a good deal.
So it will be back. We just haven't been able to pull it off with the pandemic restrictions.
Well, good. Well, I tell you what, it's I'm proud we got you at the helm of the Arkansas Trucking Association, doing a great job.
Thank you. I absolutely love it.
Anything you'd like to add before we close out? You got any other good news?
No, I want to thank you for this opportunity. It is certainly my honor to be able to come out here to Oakley today and visit and get some on the ground experience and to hear the struggles that you guys are having. And though they are not necessarily unlike the struggles that other carriers are having, it's still good to hear about it and to see. And that's how we know what's happening on the ground, is how we are able to make a difference in a positive way for you guys.
Well, I appreciate you coming out and visiting with us and sharing your thoughts. I mean, it's very candid, and I really appreciate it. And I know owner-operators and their families will appreciate it. And as always, guys, we appreciate y'all tuning in to the Oakley Podcast. Be sure and share us, subscribe on YouTube, check us out on Facebook. We got a lot of stuff. Oh, by the way, one more thing. Corey told me this morning he got us on TikTok. I don't know. Check us out, Oakley Trucking on TikTok. Tell me what that's all about. Looking forward to next week. Y'all keep watching us. We got a lot of good stuff coming up. We'll talk to you next week. Thanks.